Hello teachers, here is another video that will help us implement the PBLs better. This video addresses the PBL for the chapter of If I Could Fly. For the concept, create something that will create music for grade 4. Here are the learning objectives and the learning outcomes mapped to this PBL. In this PBL, all throughout the activities, learners will associate music with parts of the body used while playing musical instruments. Learners will also identify and differentiate musical instruments from other objects. Learners will also identify the uniqueness of each instrument, and then they'll try to make instruments out of waste as a form of presentation. The learning outcome that this PBL addresses is that learners respond to simple instructions or announcements in English made in the class. Like every other PBL, this PBL starts with the leading question of, can water make music? This, of course, is a leading question aimed to make the learners think of the concept of music being created out of everyday objects. Here, when asked this question, the learners are free to think if water can make music or not, and what are their thoughts about it. The learners will try to use their own experience of using water or listening to the sounds of water, and they'll try to come up with answers. Here, please accept all answers from every learner and encourage them to think on the possibility of music being created by water. Here, the idea is not to have a right or wrong answer to this question, but the intention is for all learners to think of the possibility and discuss within themselves if they want to. Soon after that, we can begin with activity 1, which reads, which part of the body do you need to create music? Here is a set of images provided to all the learners, where the learners will go through each image like the head, the ear, the mouth, etc. to try to identify what part of their own body do they know or do they think they can create music from. Here, the learner is expected to go through each part or each image at a time, like the head, and then ask themselves, can I create music from my head? If they say yes, then allow them to try to demonstrate that to you and to their own friends. If not, they will move on to the next image and the next part. Like, how about hands? If they identify hand as a part of the body with which creating music is possible, allow them to demonstrate as always. And also, allow them to demonstrate the various ways in which music can be created using hands. Like, hands can be used to clap, to snap, to give a high five to each other and between friends, and also to tap on the bench or the desk. Just like that, the learners will have to go through each image and each part of their own body and try to understand and try to identify if creating music is possible using those parts. This can be a fun activity to be done between learners, between their own friends, and also a good way for you to play along with learners. With that, we move on to activity 2. This activity wants the learners to find and mark musical instruments. This activity provides a bunch of images in a circular pattern. The learner is supposed to go around the image and identify every object in that image and check whether that object is a musical instrument or not. For example, they can look at the image of car and then think, is that a musical instrument? Ask your learners if car is a musical instrument. If your learners are able to identify and answer on their own, ask them to think whether car is a musical instrument or not, and allow them to discuss within themselves. The next image is of drums. Again, allow the learners to think within themselves and identify a set of drums is a musical instrument or not, or allow them to discuss within a small group or in pairs and let them identify if it is a musical instrument. If they identify that drum set is a musical instrument, then they will draw a line starting from the musical icon in the middle till the image of the drum, identifying it and marking it as a musical instrument. And just like that, all learners will go through all the images in this circle of musical objects and non-musical objects and try to differentiate musical objects from non-musical objects. We then move on to an interesting and creative activity called DIY a musical instrument. What is DIY? Ask the learners if they know the meaning of DIY, or allow them to search or ask each other the meaning of DIY. If the learners are unable to identify or know or find out what DIY means, please tell them yourself. So in this do-it-yourself activity, we begin with an empty box. This box could be of a shoe or any other box that is of no use anymore. We start by carving a small hole out of that box, just like shown in this picture. We then move on to strap 2, 3, 4 or 5 any number of rubber bands that the learners feel like using. The more the number of rubber bands, the more the number of strings in their instrument. Let us create space between the cardboard and the rubber band so that we are able to pluck them or we are able to play them better. We will do this by placing a pencil, a used pen, or anything that is small and cylindrical and long enough to be placed between the cardboard and the rubber band strings. Once that is done, we'll use a cardboard cylinder and fix it on top of this box. Once this is done, the structure of our musical instrument is now complete. Allow the learners to personalize this musical instrument by decorating the whole instrument as per their wish, using their own colors and decorative items that they want. You can have an orchestra of learners playing their own musical instruments created by themselves in the classroom and sing any poem from the textbook that they wish to or that they like for everybody in the classroom. Teacher, please make sure that every learner creates one musical instrument for themselves so that every learner gets an opportunity to follow instructions in English either by reading them as provided in the PBL or by listening to you giving them instructions as provided in the PBL, which is the whole intention of this activity. Now we move on to activity 4, which is musical interview. Here, the learner is expected to go and interview a friend or the teacher or the parent or anybody that they can. What are they going to ask, or what are they going to interview people on? They are going to ask people if they know any instruments which are wind instruments, string instruments, and instruments that require a stick or a plectrum to be used as a tool. Allow your learners to come up with their own questions to ask people. If the learners are unable to come up with their own questions, guide them by providing some templates like name 3 wind instruments. Here they can replace wind instruments with string instruments or percussion instruments or any other kinds of instruments that you want them to ask questions on. Feel free to modify the questions or add more questions of your own or more templates of your own so that the learners can create more and more questions on their own without following or copying the same question and asking the same question repeatedly. Some more examples can be, what are some string instruments? Is guitar a string instrument? Again, guitar can be replaced with, is tabla a string instrument? Or is flute a wind instrument? Or is flute a wind instrument? Etc. Use these example questions to only guide the learners but encourage the learners to create their own questions. With that, we move on to activity number 5, which is reading comprehension section. Here in this section, as every other PBL, we try to encourage the learners to read a story, to read an interesting story and understand that story on their own. Encourage the learners to read the story slowly and within themselves without reading it out loud, so that they are able to read the words, the sentences, and understand the story in their own pace. If the learners are unable to read the story, please read the story yourself in a slow pace with good intonation and with gestures if you are able to. Here is a sample reading for you all. The magic of music. Once upon a time, in a village, there was a girl named Divya who loved music. One morning, she found a shiny flute. When she played it, beautiful music filled the air. Excited, she showed it to her teacher, Miss Sudha. Divya played a joyful tune, and soon everyone in the class was smiling, singing, and clapping along. After that day, Divya and her friends played music every day. They learned new songs, did dances, and became a little band. Music brought them joy and laughter, filling their village with sweet melodies. Teacher, do not expect the child to understand the whole story after a single reading. Please allow them to read the story multiple times, or if you are reading the story for them, please repeat the story multiple times with varied intonation, or retell the story in your own sentences or in your own method or in your own way, so that the learners are able to understand the story yet listen to English. And remember, when you are retelling the story or repeating the story, remember to do it in simple English using your own simple words. Soon after the reading comprehension are some questions provided for all students to answer. Allow the learners to read the questions and the options given under them and let them try to identify which is the correct answer. If they have understood the story, if they have read the story or listened to you reading the story for them or telling the story for them, they will easily identify which is the right answer to each of the questions. Encourage thinking and discussion among the learners rather than providing the answers for these questions yourself. Then we move on to practice sheets. What are practice sheets? Yes, as in every PBL, practice sheet or the practice section allows our learners to practice answering to multiple choice questions. These questions are based on the concept of music, along with helping them understand simple words related to music and instruments and simple phrases or sentences related to musical instruments. A quick note, answering to these questions with the right answer is not the intention of the practice sheet section or the practice sheet questions. The main intention is that the learners understand the question, analyze the options, and identify which option is the most suited or the correct answer to the provided question. And teachers, for your convenience, you can find the right answers along with the explanation of why that answer is the right one on Teachopia. Let all learners enjoy answering to all the interesting questions in the practice section. Once they have done that, allow the learners to use the OMR sheet provided at the end of the PBL. Here in the OMR sheet, the learners mark or shade the circle corresponding to the right option that they feel is the correct answer to each of the questions. Using the OMR sheet is a skill that we also want our learners to have to compete in this 21st century. With that, the learners have successfully completed the PBL, Create Something that will create music, and they are moving one step closer in improving their English language proficiency. Thank you, teacher.